Welcome back, everyone. I am Captain Foley of Trekyards.
And I am astounded by the majesty of you, Stuart. You are big and round, and you can go through all time and space.
Oh, that's mean. You're so mean to me.
Just being literal.
Yeah, we're here to talk about The Guardian of Forever today, guys. If you haven't seen the latest episode of Discovery and don't want spoilers, then don't watch this.
Well, then the internet is not your friend today, or yesterday. People are posting instantly, and this is a day or two after. It's one of those things that we know you guys want to talk about it. And last week we tried to keep things as far away as possible, but I've seen numerous scenes being uploaded, etc., etc. Because this is the big news story. So
Yeah, and this is Friday morning. This is like the day after, so that we're filming this. We're filming this the day after. We've already seen a lot of stuff that's spoiled it for people. So, anyway, we're here to talk about it because we have done an episode on The Guardian of Forever, which you should go back and check out. Just type in Trekyards Guardian of Forever and you'll find it. So yeah, today we're going to be looking at the original Guardian of Forever and comparing it with the new Guardian of Forever to see whether it's a good visual update or not. And I think it was a visual update that was done pretty well. Could have been a little bit better, but there's explanations at the Guardian. This is the Guardian, the one from TOS that we
which
saw.
is the biggest surprise.
Very far from,
actually.
yes, very very far from its original coordinates because we know this is on the edge of the Gamma Quadrant somewhere. So it has moved, and we find out why it moved because of the temporal wars. But yeah, so it's the same entity, the same mechanism or entity. It's one or the other. It's both.
And, Stuart, we are going to, of course, mention the side appearance in the animated series. The only episode that Gene thought was mostly canon. So while we haven't seen it in live action since TOS, we did see it in between. And so there is multiple sources because, as you can see from this, those two Guardians do not look the same and clearly are in a different part of ground. The original Guardian is this nice little neat thing, not over a cliff, and then the other Guardian could be different. So they use their different level of budget and ability to create to make it look different. So it's already been changed once in the side.
And that's in the episode Yesteryear of the animated series, in case you guys are interested and didn't know that. So check that out.
So there's three Guardians to compare, Stuart. But obviously we'll talk about that right now. What do you think when it exploded and reformed? What was your first reaction? Did you, because it's TOS, did you go like a little schoolgirl or?
A little bit, yeah. Just to hear him say, "I am the Guardian," and have the same voice was really great, even though it kind of fades back into Carl right at the end.
Which is respect to the new actor as well. I like that as a balance.
Yep, I did too. But then for the door to shatter apart, and then a very 3D moment. Should have been in 3D because you got that splinter of wood right in front of you, and then zoom, it reforms into the Guardian. Was a very dramatic reveal for sure. But
it was. We know this is a moment. Here's a moment. Although they're obviously like, okay.
Because I had been talking online with people, obviously, leading up to this. They're like, it's probably the Guardian of Forever. And I'm like, it's probably a Guardian of Forever, but not the Guardian of Forever because it's in the Gamma Quadrant. So I was trying to be all smart. And no, they went and made me look like an idiot. But that's okay. I don't mind admitting when I'm wrong.
Well, the thing about that is that obviously we don't know where the story's going. We don't know what's in the script. So if we are to even extrapolate it was a Guardian, to then go further, we'd have to then say, oh, and because they moved, like we'd have to keep inventing more and more what we thought was happening that we had no evidence for. Not only is it the Guardian, it also moved. It also, we had no information to go on that. So of course we're going to say it wasn't the Guardian, but they actually did explain, and as long as there's an explanation that isn't like the best thing ever, but it's pretty solid. It would have been nicer if they'd said as a side comment that the Guardian had to become more sentient in a sense to deal with these people, because you do not get the same sense that he can create this hollow corporeal entity to chat to them in the original version. It wasn't that sophisticated in a interactive sense, and this is clearly a big step. So not only that, but also can move location. It would have been nice if they'd said a little bit to explain why, because that feels like quite a hefty retcon to TOS.
It's based on the original concept for the Guardian from the original story, absolutely. But it could have been stated that during the Temporal Wars, when people were messing with it, that When it moved to another planet, it got access to bigger power source because of the planet, perhaps. So it was able to access more of its features. And the people were saying, well, if this is the Guardian, why were there no time waves that Discovery was detecting? But I have no problem with that personally, because I think that the Guardian in the first one had said, since long before your sun burned bright, I have awaited a question, which means it's been alone essentially for our solar system's whole existence before that. Like, it's been a long time. So when it detected a ship, it might have sent out the time waves to maybe get some attention, to let people know it's still around, it's still alive. And Discovery just spored in. So literally it could be emanating time waves still, but it is in hiding. So I can see it toning that down.
Well, yeah, and just the fact that time waves are very specific to the situation we found it in. This dude is not only away from all life, because it's the middle of nowhere, which they do say, it's holding itself invisible and cannot be scanned in any way, and it's even hiding itself to people that come say hi. So if it can make time, space, travel, reality, and alternate universes, of course it can hide itself enough so you can't detect it, which it did. That's why the door is unreadable.
Yeah, and that's why I like the fact that Carl's there as well, because even though somebody found him, he's still not letting on that he's the Guardian. So if they're still looking for the Guardian of Forever to pass through for a time mission or whatever, I'm just Carl, I'm just the guy. There's no gate. What are you talking about, gate? There's no gate? What are you talking about?
There's a door, but door's not technically a gate.
He wouldn't have to present the door necessarily, because that's a little bit too obvious. But yeah. I can see, he can maybe tell what their intentions were. He's hiding, so that's why there's no time waves and stuff. So there's a lot of good explanations.
There's a slight, just inevitable problem with the Guardian as a concept, because you've got to assume he doesn't know, he can't go into the future, because otherwise he would know everything, and then basically it's just a god creature. So he's only got to be into the past, otherwise he would know they're coming there, he would know all about the things. But then he also had the newspaper saying Giorgio was dying. I assume that's just because he can scan Giorgio rather than anything else. It's more that literal. Scan she's dying, burn my no. But it would, like I said, would have been really nice if we'd had some, we got enough, but some sense of, yes, during the Temporal Cold War or the Temporal Wars, I had to alter my base programming to adapt to being utilised, not being utilised. I worked with Starfleet for 100 years before I decided it was the wrong idea, and so I had to create this more interactive nature. Or even Starfleet gave me this secondary computer core which allowed me to create a holographic avatar, And these things are easily retconnable in, but the way it was presented was very different functionally to the original Guardian. That's why it was better if it had been a different Guardian tech version than the same guy, because they were not treated the same way. But obviously you've got enough stuff between, so hopefully maybe they'll expand upon that. Now you've got a Discovery that can get to the Guardian Forever in less than 5 minutes. You can beam down to see him, and so at any point in the next season, they could be at a Guardian Forever time portal in less than 2 minutes. Literally. So that's a big MacGuffin to include in the show. Now, it would be nice if they do have that in season 4, and Discovery's moved. That'd be great. That'd be a beautiful way of solving that problem. But you now are adding that, we can't go back in time. Well, you can. And all you have to do is say the person died. Yes, they went back in time, now they died. There you go, no longer breaking. Because technically, Giorgio is now a temporal fugitive. And you would think the time cops in 20th century would be like, why is... But that's everything in Discovery, isn't it? Nothing can happen because the time cops should be stopping it, etc., etc. Because remember, the Temporal Cold War happened after the 20th century people, which means the time cops still existed because they were before.
Just watched that episode too. And you got to think that the temporal accords were probably... They were involved with that, with making those rules, and knew that they couldn't mess with time after a certain point or something. That's a whole conversation on its own. God. No, but this is a good reimagining of that original gate. It's got the same shape. It looks the same. I do like the time tunnel effect, which is kind of neat.
My only problem is a little bit obnoxious. It's trying really hard to be fancy. But that's my only, that's it. If it was just a light, it would have been a Stargate, And it couldn't just be fog, that would be boring. And it can't be TS, it's just a yellow circle. So I get it exactly why, but it's a little bit much.
Yeah, they very much took the yesteryear Guardian and took that spinny and just, let's make that CG. So they were aware of that one at least. So
yeah, and if you look at these 3 Guardians, it's one of those things where it's obviously a different shape, but they're not going to verbatim necessarily recreate the same shape. Well, obviously, fans have done that. But in reality, yeah, look at the 3 designs, and it obviously is much closer to the yesteryear version, which the original Guardian is not stone, it's plastic with fairy lights inside. That's purple. I think the original Guardian has a nicer vibe than the new Guardians. I think it has a much more alien, much more organic, much more living vibe. The new one is stone. That's the end of the sentence. So it's certainly a less interesting version, but it definitely fits in more with the yesteryear version, which is obviously the latest version. So I like they definitely just pulled from that, and even like the little cracks and stuff. Like, it definitely has a very nice visual time with that. But I guess they thought maybe adding lights would have been gimmicky, but it's like it's less visually interesting than the original.
I totally agree, and I'd completely forgotten about the animated series once you brought it up here, but it does seem a lot more similar to that one, and they watched this episode for their Michael Burnham Spock back on Vulcan episodes that they did last season. They watched this episode and were probably like, hey, that thing's cool. Has it ever shown up before? I don't know. I haven't watched Star Trek. Oh, well, let's use this in a future episode, maybe next season. They probably had that discussion because it's Discovery people, but they clearly used this one, and they did watch this episode yesteryear because of Michael Burnham and young Spock from last season. So that's actually very interesting. The swirly effect is very similar, and yeah, it has less in common with the TOS version than it does with this one, which is weird. At least they tried. It does still have the same shape, basically, roughly, as the TOS one.
Yeah, and if you look at them side by side as a graphic, like, it's... Yeah, and obviously, in my graphic, unfortunately, there's a pillar in the way, so you've got to extend it further. I can use what is in the show. But like I say, it is less interesting in its own way. I do like the 3D nature of the tunnel, but it's odd, it's just stone. Now, maybe if you want to retcon, you say he's older now, and as you get older, your skin becomes kind of more coarse and
it's also a different planet as well. You got to think, though, he's older now, 900 years older, but 900 years to this entity, which was been around since before our solar system existed, is not a long time. That's like a day.
But as you know, just like being president for 4 years can age you 10 years because it makes your hair go grey, fighting in a temporal war for a couple of 100 years, that makes you more stony.
Sure. Plus, he moved to a new planet, might need to use the resources available there. It could just be different. Like I said, access to a different power core because of the planet's bigger or something. And
that's one of the innate problems, though. He can move. Like, the Guardian, to me, was always a sentient computer device. Why the hell would it be able to move? Why the hell would it be able to go invisible? Why the hell would it be able to do any of these things? Like, it might be sentient to some extent, but it's still a machine. It's still a robot. It's still a...
It's not, though, because Kirk asked it, what are you? Are you living or are you machine? I am both and I am neither. Like, there's no real clear answer. It's still an entity, and yet it's artificial,
FTL is definitely... It would have been nice if they'd said, like, I had allies that moved me here, but then even just that much consciousness seems bizarre for this thing, and...
I don't think that's how it would move. I think it was more like a connection, like on some kind of weird network that the people that created it had different access to different planets. I can see it just teleporting to a different planet. That's why I thought there was a Guardian of Forever, not the Guardian, because I could see them building gates on different planets.
Well, no, we agreed with that. But it's like, just because you've got a warp drive doesn't mean you've got a time drive. Just because you've got a time drive doesn't mean you've got a warp drive. FTL and time travel are not the same technology. Some things can do both, but just because it can go put you through a portal anywhere through time and space doesn't mean it itself can move through time and space. So it is definitely a jump. Now, I like the idea that, yes, maybe this is another planet in the network, and so it was able to, saying it summoned it. I mean, it's still stupid that it can just beam there. That's still weird. Maybe, though, it's not so... Because what would have been kind of cool, though, if, in fact, take it a slightly different way around. The Guardian isn't what you see... Because it isn't the same portal, right? So rather than saying it's a visual retcon, which it isn't because TOS still exists, wouldn't it be interesting if Carl is actually, after TOS and after the introduction of it in the greater universe, because obviously it was alone for so long, like you said, people started knowing about it. What if it was realized that actually what is in the Guardian is actually a life form? And the Guardian is just its shell that keeps it sort of stable.
Like a hermit crab.
Yes, exactly. And so it was on this planet as a living organic energy computer, kind of like the sphere data in its own way. And then the energy was able to move and leave. Now, not FTL, just through subspace, whatever. And so it took 100 years to get here, whatever. And then once it got here, it then reformed its own shell because it wanted to live here. Hence why it's different shell, hence why different size, hence why it's different effect. And then you've sort of retconned into an entity, and that I think also solves yesteryear as well, because maybe it moved again because it was like, I'm bored of this location, or maybe it has to shell every few years, because that I think would help that a lot. Because then the Guardian's not moving, the energy of the being is moving, standard light or through a wormhole or something, etc. I think that would be way more interesting.
I totally agree with that. I think that's a perfect idea for what the situation that we were presented with here. Although I don't know if it moved necessarily for yesteryear. That was
I'm just adding a bit of extra there. Just for now.
Yeah. Just a little bit of we knew where it was, so we went there.
It just looks totally different than it did the first time we came here.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, actually. Just the energy itself moves and reconfigures itself as needed. That's actually fantastic.
And also explains why it looks different, like I say, because I just wanted to form it, like as a basic model. But the fact that it can also, because if you take it as either the original door we saw in the last episode was either a different construct, a illusion, or just energy field. Like the way it was formatted isn't like it was also higher than the Guardian. So it's on the ground. Like the Guardian has a little lip, so you got to step over to get into it. So she obviously didn't do that. So if it can create its own facade, then the door can still be the literal Guardian. So I think that also fixes that, because it is weird the Guardian would be invisible and create a separate, like, that doesn't even make sense either, unless it's just a being that is creating a facade.
And you got to think too that, like it said, people came after it in an attempt to use it in the Time Wars and kill people. It could be that now it just makes itself look so much more intimidating, like bigger, scarier with the vortex. It's trying to deter people.
But that was the point of the door, to be confusing. It's now showing itself to be friendly with these guys. Like it's accepting them. So
true. That is true. That is true.
But yeah, I might have to add this to my personal headcanon then. I think my idea there kind of saves it for me a bit. But yeah, as Discovery retcons go, just like the aliens from the cage, pretty close enough to be cool. There's a bit more update, although this actually looks less advanced. It would have been kind of nice if I had especially since it's also a fully CG element. They could have made it more complicated. It would have been kind of cool if there was like an under-level energy, like flowy mixture moving. Would have been kind of cool, like really subtle, but like a living.
I wish there was still like the glowing ring, like that pulse when it spoke. That would be cool.
Well, but it never spoke though. I think that. That could be maybe just Carl is the energy of the being, and that's its shell. Maybe when it's out of the shell, it doesn't have the lights because it's not speaking.
I'd buy that.
And so when he goes back into it, then because that would have been a nice note. If Ashley beams up, he like touches it and it reforms back into original Guardian and says goodbye, Discovery. You could have had a cool like extra moment there.
Well, there you go. I mean, that's interesting. Lots to talk about here.
All credit to them bringing back another TOS thing. So we haven't seen this thing since the 70s. I mean, think about that for a second. That's a long time, and Trek's kind of stayed away from it, and all considering this is quite a good appearance. So there's, another. We saw Pike, we saw Cage, we saw Vina in last season. We saw, they're considering how they've kind of first season messed up all the art design. They've certainly made an effort to show us cool stuff from the TOS especially. It's kind of amazing what they've really done when you consider that, and they get getting closer and closer as they go into a more respectful design aesthetic. So it's pretty special when you think about it, actually.
Definitely adds more layers to the Guardian of Forever. Like I said, go back and watch our episode. We had it. That's the information we had at the time. We should probably revisit that at some point. And maybe just do a live discussion based on it, because I'd love to get your thoughts as well. So speaking of, put your comments down below. If we do a live on this, you need to be notified. So click that notification bell icon to all and make sure you're subscribed to the channel, because this is something we might talk about in a live down the road, because we love doing live discussions, talking about different things in the Trek universe, and this is definitely one that I think could benefit from some input from you guys. So please consider doing all those things, subscribing and clicking notify, or just putting your comments down below and chatting with other commenters. So
that sounds like a plan, but another great plan is to support us directly, because think about the backlog we've made in 6 years. A lot of stuff. Yeah. So please support us if you can directly. We can't do this stuff without you, especially in the months without the new shows. Really essential. So now's a great time to join the channel on YouTube, on Patreon, Super Chat in the lives, as Chip said about earlier. Just Super Chat does make a big difference. Have those comments and questions heard. a one-time donation on PayPal at trekyards@hotmail.com. That goes into our show account. It lets us do new kit, etc., and things break or updates, etc. Although webcams aren't ever updated for some reason. There's never any webcams. But whatever. When they get new webcams, we'll get them. It'll be exciting. And what will be exciting, though, is when we see you later. Or you see us, depending if it's live or not.
So until then, whenever it is, I'm Captain Foley.
I'm Connor Coons. Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.